Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. I am Stephanie Bree. I'm a transgender woman and I talk about all things horror, and today I'm doing something a little different. This is a horror topic video. I don't do these very often. These are 10 non-horror movies every horror fan needs to see. So they either have something disturbing in them or something, you know, they deal with death in a different way than a horror movie does. Things like that. Number one is Jawbreaker. Jawbreaker is a dark comedy about a group of girls, high school girls, who have one of their friends is having a birthday, and so they kidnap her, shove her in a trunk of a car, and take her. They're taking her to where they're going to have the birthday party. Only they shove the it's a jawbreaker in her mouth to silence her too far, and she chokes to death. And they spend the rest of the movie trying to cover up her death and frame somebody else for it. This is a dark fucking movie, but it's also funny. So it's weird because this movie will make you uncomfortable because you'll laugh at things and then instantly go, ooh, I shouldn't laugh at that. But I highly recommend this movie. Number 9, it's not really a horror movie, obviously, but this one is one that horror fans can appreciate because it's like got horror elements to it, and I think it's a very fun movie and a very funny movie. This is Ernest Scared Stupid. I don't recommend all the Ernest movies. This is my favorite of the Ernest movies, and a damn good movie. It's hilarious. And yeah, it's basically about this troll that lives in a tree, an evil tree, and it takes the souls of kids and traps them in these little wooden figurines. And Ernest, who is a dipshit, has to save the day by rescuing the kids from the tree, from the troll, and defeating the troll, and so on and so forth. Now, when I did my Alfred Hitchcock video, I talked a lot about film noir. This next movie is kind of a noir. It's like a neo noir in a way. It's kind of like a tech thriller in a way. But it's definitely intense, and I think it's very much worth watching. This is The 13th Floor. I don't want to spoil this movie. But what it is basically it's kind of like The Matrix. You have a guy who gets killed. But it's a murder mystery. But the thing is, there's a virtual world, like a simulation, like The Matrix. You go into this virtual world, and it's like the real world. But the virtual world is set in like a film noir setting. It's like in the 1920s, 1930s. And I don't think it's black and white, but it's like it looks like a black and white movie. And so one of these simulations got out of the simulation somehow and killed a guy. And so the programmer of the simulation is going into the simulation to solve the mystery. And, there's some twists and turns. So this is a very intense, very good movie. Number 7 is a movie I do not like. I do not enjoy this movie, but I still think as a horror fan, you can appreciate it for what it does. I'm going to say what it is, briefly go into why I don't like it, and then why as a horror fan you should watch it. It's the Mortal Kombat remake. I don't like it because the original Mortal Kombat movie follows the arcade's storyline to the T. I'm a fan of the arcade game. Well, I'm a fan of all the Mortal Kombat games. But I'm one of those weirdos who wasn't into Mortal Kombat just because of the gore. I was fascinated by the story and the visual effects, the digitized characters. In 1992, when this game came out, that was fucking impressive. It was like Hollywood and video games coming together, before Final Fantasy VII. In a different way, but, this was the early stages of getting to where we are today. The Mortal Kombat remake just shits all over the story, makes up its own story, makes up its own fucking goddamn characters, and does its own thing. But, as a horror fan, I can appreciate that, like the video games, this one does have the fucking gore. And it's not necessarily scary, by any means. But if you are a fan of gory movies, this is fucking gory. This, especially if you're a fan of Mortal Kombat, this will satisfy you. Number 6 is a movie I did watch as a kid. It terrified me as a kid. I do not like it either. Not a fan of this movie at all. Not really a fan of the character or the franchise this movie is a part of either. But that's another video for my other channel. It's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I would almost say this is a horror movie. But not quite. But it's fucking terrifying. And this is not appropriate for a fucking 10-year-old. Which is how old I was when I watched it. And my parents took it back. They bought it because they are fans of Indiana Jones. They took it back to the video store after we watched it. And wanted their buddy back. And like, we're not letting our kids watch this shit. My parents were evangelical Christians. So take that how you will. But the weird thing, well, that's a story I don't want to get into. Anyways, number 5 is Heathers. Heathers is a movie about it's a high school movie about a teenage girl who fakes her suicide and then gets the idea along the way. Her and her deranged boyfriend get this idea to murder the popular girls, but frame them to make it look like suicides. And it gets fucking crazy after that. Number 4 is definitely a kids movie, but it's a fucking fun kids movie. It's an iconic kids movie. It's one of the best intro to horror movies out there. It's Hocus Pocus, obviously. Hocus Pocus is about these 3 sisters who are witches, and they're actual evil witches, so, I do take issue with that, but they do it well. They're not fully respectful to witch lore, but they're more respectful to witch lore than most Hollywood movies are, so, A for effort, at least. I am a witch in real life, so, the way Hollywood treats witches does bother me, as I've talked about in other videos, especially my Halloween Season of the 3 Witch. I shit all over that movie for the way it treats witches. Hocus Pocus, the witches die and come back to life on Halloween night to terrorize the town and steal the souls of children, which is terrifying when you're a kid. And I absolutely love it. It's not really scary, but it's like kind of scary to a kid. It's kind of scary, but it's fucking awesome. Great musical number in the middle when the witches cast a spell on the parents. I love it. Just fun movie, lots of iconic imagery. A zombie. There's a cat in it. A talking cat. There's fucking everything you want in this kind of movie. Side note, this movie was the beginning of my crush on Thora Birch. And you're sitting there raising an eyebrow like, what? I'm the exact same age as Thora Birch. So when I watched her in this movie, it was age appropriate for me to crush on her, and I followed her career, so I just watched everything she was in. So yeah. Anyways. Number 3, some people will get mad at me for recommending because they'll say, you should review this. This is a horror movie. And I'm going to say it's not a horror movie. at all. It's a suspense thriller, but it's the best of the suspense thrillers, and it's the one that I will not review because there's not enough horror elements in this one, unlike some of the others that I have reviewed that are on the fence. But I still think you should watch it if you're a horror fan. It's satisfying. And number 3 is Fargo from, I believe, 1996, if I'm not mistaken. So the gist of it is you have this man who is in deep water financially, and he's owes money to some sharks. And so he hatches a plan to hire a hitman to kidnap his wife to get her rich dad to pay the hitman off. But the hitman's on the deal, so he's going to split the take with the hitman. So that's the plan, but it goes all wrong. And fucking, very terrific, very horrifying things ensue. This movie's great for 2 reasons. Well, a lot of reasons. Maybe I will talk about this one. I don't know. This movie's great because I love William H. Macy. He's my favorite actor of all time. This movie's great because it's got Steve Buscemi. He's one of my favorite character actors of all time. This movie's great because the cop, the Minnesota cop, is just fucking awesome in this movie. The woman, I think her name is Marge, if I'm not mistaken. Haven't seen it in a while, but I've seen it a lot. I have this one on Blu-ray. Number 22, I'm not going to talk about at all because this is a very traumatic movie. It's a very fucked up movie. I'm going to say what it is, and then you can figure it out for yourself. But I do want you to watch this movie. It's called Donnie Darko, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Number 1 is a movie that is by one of my favorite filmmakers. Number 1 is Deceitful, because it feels like a coming-of-age summer love story movie. Like, 85% of the movie is a coming-of-age love story movie. But the ending will fuck with your head, and it is deceptionally, decidedly, absolutely 110% depressing afterwards. And it will fuck you up. And it does deal with death. It's called The Virgin Suicides. Now, I don't want to spoil this movie at all. You can't really spoil The Virgin Suicides. It's in the name of the movie. You got a bunch of teenage girls who are going to kill themselves. But the movie is about the boys who are infatuated with these girls to an obsessive degree, who are just trying to figure them out. Now, this movie's also extra depressing because it's based on a true story, and it's not one of those supposedly based on a true story movies. It's actual, got the news clippings and everything. And it's made by Sofia Coppola, who is a goddess in Hollywood, who is, literal royalty. Her dad is Francis Ford Coppola, and if you don't know his name, you're not a film fan. You're not a cinephile. That's just all there is to it. You know who Francis Ford Coppola is, and you should absolutely know who Sofia Coppola is. Her movies are beautiful movies. And I absolutely think if you're a horror fan, you should watch The Virgin Suicides, because this movie is definitely a mindfuck. That's my list. Stay cool.